It's time for the next episode of Live by Heart
Today
with your hosts, Dawn Spiegelberg and Wendy R. Wolf.
Hello and welcome to the Live by Heart Today show number 25. This is a show designed to help you navigate change, uncertainty, and the new world we found ourselves in. We'll talk a little bit about science, a little bit about how our body works, a little bit about intuition, and we'll talk a lot about transformation. I'm Dawn Spiegelberg, posture therapist and coherence coach. Continuing our show's relationship focus, today's theme is unleashing your voice. With me for our heart to heart is my co-host, Wendy R. Wolf, Professional Transformation Facilitator. Hi, Wendy.
Hey, Dawn. I'm very excited for today. We have a good friend of mine here visiting, Susan DuMett, and she is a body, mind, spirit integration specialist. And I can't wait for everyone to meet her. She is on the top of my list of wonderful people in the world. I have great respect for her and her work. So let's get to speaking with her.
So I just am excited to welcome Susan because as a mind, body, spirit unification specialist, the medium she uses is the incredible voice. And I've attended her workshops, and her ability to bring people from a place of um, slight discomfort, unknowingness, um, timidity, and at the end of the workshop, it was so incredible. I've always loved singing, but I've never had a great singing voice. But after that workshop, I felt awesome, and my voice actually began to change. So that's phenomena that my voice shifted because of her workshop. So it wasn't just, oh, come to the workshop and do these vocalizations. There was transformation in the workshop. And of course, that's what our show is about.
Yes. So come on down, Susan DuMett.
Welcome, Susan.
Hi, Dawn. Hi, Wendy. Thank you so much for having me here today. It's really a delight to be here with you.
So regarding our theme, unleashing your voice, I would love for you to share with people who are watching just a little information about how you see the voice and your understanding of what our voice is capable of.
Sure, absolutely. So just to take a step back, I have a lot of work and training in voice work, both in singing and in speaking, also in writing. And I actually started out my professional career as a writer, journalist, writing about other people's stories and writing for other people in their voice. And so that actually started before I got full on into the actual physical vocalization. Another part that people might want to know is that I am a licensed hypnotherapist. I'm certified in different energy healing modalities, as are both of you. And I've done a lot of training in personal coaching and also sentience development, the idea of heightened senses. And of course, all of those things, the sentience and what we feel and sense and know, feeds who we are and what our voice is like, what we need to voice.
That's beautiful. I didn't know all of those aspects of your training and the work that you've done. And I have a question
Sure.
about how it was beneficial for you to take on the voice of people you were writing for. Tell me a little bit about that transformation. It strikes me that it may be a little bit like acting, where you become another character. Is that true? Tell me about that.
Yes, and that's such a great question because that takes us deep down back into uh, the past and the places where um, the self becomes fragmented. And my work now is around mind, body, spirit unification and integration, and thus the integration of self.
Mm.
But most of us, if you're a human on the planet, you've experienced trauma in your life. And often that trauma happens at an early age, or at least the first instance of it. And in that traumatic event or series of events, we ourselves become fragmented. And there's a great psychologist in Canada, Gabor Mate, you may know who he is, who speaks so eloquently about the separation and where we lose a sense of self. And in my case, I lost it so much that I actually didn't realize that I was a separate person. And it wasn't in the way of like all are one and I'm one. It was having no sense of who I was at all. And thus parroting what other people said or did, reacting so as to avoid further trauma,
Mm.
hiding, being quiet, and then kind of becoming a person who was watching and waiting and knowing how to match or act in the way that caused the least disruption. And
Mm.
anybody who's had any trauma or abuse in their history probably can understand that. And of course, in the process, the idea of having a voice or a true voice or a voice at all kind of just goes out the door. I didn't really have a sense of it.
Mm.
Yeah.
So you would say you were fragmented, and now
Yes. And
your voice is independent. Can you tell me at about what age were you when you began shifting and becoming yourself and separate from matching other people?
yeah. Well, I mean, everything is an evolution, and certainly along the way, I got little bits and pieces. But the story wouldn't be complete without sort of talking about the dark downward spiral I took in terms of self-harm and self-deprecating activities, let's just say, that were really rooted in this belief system of not knowing who I was and thus not having any worth. And because I was acting and reacting, I really was basing myself and my self-worth on outside activities, right?
Mm.
How I was viewed, how what I did was perceived, like if I achievement-oriented self-worth, I think that's another theme people can relate to. And then that feeds a certain mindset and energy focus of perfectionism, but a
Mm.
perfectionism based upon other people's ideas of what you should be or what anybody should be. And so then any possibility of one's voice gets further tightened, further squelched, right?
Mhm.
In my case, my own self-destructive behaviors came to a point where it was either succumb to them completely or live or do something else. But to be truthful, like it kind of went in different phases of it, right? You hit the
Mhm.
bottom and then you climb a little bit up and then you hit again and then you keep going. And in each iteration, more and more of my voice came in. Now, I talk about my writing. Of course, it's very easy for me to write about and for and match the tone and voice of other people in writing because I could do it so well in speaking and just
Mm.
being. My singing voice came into play um, because I just had a moment where I felt like this welling up, something had to come out. Something had to come out. And I had the huge blessing of connecting with a vocal teacher who could see this. I mean, she was a very sort of holistic uh, music teacher. And she worked with me to step into my voice. And a turning point came when we were getting ready for our first recital. And I'd really only sung more full throttle with her. And this is, I mean, she was an operatic vocal teacher, classical and operatic. And so we had our rehearsal for the recital, and all the other students were there. And I got up to do my piece, and I couldn't get through it without bursting into tears. I felt a lot of, eyes on you.
Yeah.
And in that, a lot of shame came up, and a lot of like, oh my God, like, ugh. And she somehow knew that it was because I had not had the experience of being fully witnessed for my voice. I don't know how. In retrospect, I didn't know what was going on. So she stopped me, and she had all of the students. She had me sit in a chair and had every student that was there, it was probably 15 or 20, sit around me, stand behind me, and put their hands on my body, on my chest, on all of this, and just settle in. And then she had me sing. And it was one of the most profound experiences of my life to have that. And of course, I was able to sing because the acceptance level was so present. And I didn't have to it wasn't performing, it was just that allowing. So that's a little bit.
That is such a beautiful story.
Yeah,
and
she
that's
was
an
amazing.
amazing segue into the mind, body, spirit connection.
Yes.
So will you talk about what happened in that moment? So you mentioned their hands being on you. It really brought you into your body and being present to what was in that moment. Will you talk a little bit about those connections?
Yeah, absolutely. So the hands on the body, I mean, the voice, we don't think about this, but the voice is a very physical force. When you make a sound, whether it's just a simple ah or ah, you can feel it in your body. It resonates, heart resonance, it resonates. And it's, in the work I do, it's a unifier of body and of mind and of spirit. When you allow the fullness of your voice to come, it embraces and holds the beliefs, the feelings. It's a vehicle for that expression. And then that can transcend in the etheric sense, transcend in connection to other people. It becomes a force that is you, but takes you out of you and creates almost, what's the word? It's like an out of ordinary experience, if you will. So for me, especially, who had been very closed off in my voice and very reactionary, it literally created a new perspective of what life could be, of what I could do, or the world around me. And I know that's a little bit fuzzy, but
it's not fuzzy. And this is why it's not fuzzy, because everything is vibration. Everything has a frequency, right?
Yes.
Light is a particular frequency. Radio and microwaves, those are all particular frequencies. And your ability to create, right? It's creation.
Yeah.
Of a frequency, a vibration, really tapped into who you were without all the other stories and stuff that wasn't you.
Exactly.
And so, of course, everybody knows. Wendy, you're going to laugh. Here, I said it again. Everybody knows. Genesis, in the beginning, God created the earth. But the amazing part is that the Bible says God spoke the universe into being, right? So speaking, the act of speaking is the creative force.
Yes.
So you were able to participate in what I believe is our purpose as human beings, and that is to create.
To create. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. And so in my workshops, which I know you've attended, often people are really scared to open up. They have that, they know that there's a need to do something. There's a block. Often people say, my throat chakra is blocked. And yes, but it's much more than this. It's much more than this space or place, because it comes back to your own sense of self, your own sense of worth, your personal power, and the flow of that. And so I always start with a fun practice called, just the anything voice, or even the ugly voice. Now, in my world, no voice is ugly. I've done performances and recordings where I am making the most insane sounds, and to some ears, it might sound discordant or ugly. But I put that out there to sort of break the idea that there is an ugly voice. And when I say use your ugly voice, everybody always kind of knows that. And I will start by making a really intense sound to sort of break the ice. And it's really amazing how people are like, oh, okay, well, if it's okay to do that, then it's okay to do this. And we start with sounds because those are often, they're more primal, they're more visceral sometimes, and they really create, start the catharsis, if you will. We hold, and I know I'm preaching to people who already know this, but we hold so much inside, especially if you've had trauma or a series of trauma and you haven't really dove in and intended to it. There's so much trapped inside that fragments us from ourselves. And even just one yelping release can start opening that flow.
I'd like to talk to that moment when you introduced the idea of the ugly voice and just expressing anything that came out of you that wasn't pretty or premeditated, right? It was just expressing through your voice. And the most powerful part of it was that we were all doing it together. And that was really unifying. We were all just going up and down and, different percussive pieces in our voices. And because we were in a circle and doing it together, I then felt like, wow, this is my tribe. This is a group of people that I can be my ugliest with. And hey, look, we're okay. We all made it through that strange experience, and we're still here together.
Yeah. And I think that's important because some of the things that need to be tended to within us are feelings and beliefs that aren't pretty. Intense anger, intense grief, things that are often not easy to talk about or bring up with people. And sometimes we're aware of them, and sometimes we don't know what they are. Like, we don't have a name for it, but a sound can express it. A sound can go in, be with a feeling, and release it in a way that's sometimes more effective and efficient than talking about it or even letting the voice of anger come out. Yeah.
And you're describing connecting ourselves to a feeling that
Mhm.
allows us to be pre-verbal about it. Because
Yes,
a lot of
exactly.
times we
Thank
have
you for that language.
experiences, yes, we have experiences that happen before we're able to speak, and
Yes,
those experiences are held in us, and the we don't have the words because they occurred before we had the ability.
absolutely.
With
Absolutely.
that, let's take a short break.
Let's give a shout out to our sponsor. Thank you, We Are Storically, for making this show possible.
Welcome back to our show today, talking about unleashing your voice. And we just mentioned that sounds allow us to express ourselves without having to use words. And getting back to a place where things may have affected us before we were able to speak, and using sound to reach those places is very beneficial for us. Susan, I would love to know how you see things differently after all this work that you've done with your voice and that beautiful story about expressing yourself and allowing yourself to sing
Mm.
when you were in school. That was such a beautiful thing. And how has that changed for you?
I think when you come to be comfortable with your voice, everything shifts. It is that great, I think of it as a thread that sort of weaves the mind, the body, and spirit together. And certainly you can do mind, body, spirit work without the voice. I'm not saying that. But because its physical and metaphysical or transcendent vibration, it it has the power to both disrupt, both is not the right word, disrupt, um, clear, and then harmonize.
Mm,
And I talk a little bit about that in the work with people that I do. If we have a block about something, whether it's in your voice or it's a belief system, we need to disrupt it first.
mm,
And there's disruption is an honoring, right? It's not like, oh, let's just kick it out. It's okay, this is what happened, this is why. But let's disrupt the unhelpful pattern of it, whether it's keeping silent, keeping yourself invisible, which is what I did, um, or the other way, where sometimes when people have their voice squelched, it comes out um, in ways that aren't helpful to others.
mm,
You alluded to it in an initial email to me about this, where um, well, we all know of the bully at school who is abused at home, right? The bully that asserts his or her voice in a violent or imposing way because their own self is being disrupted or experiencing that at home, right?
mm,
Another person who has that experience might internalize it and become quiet and invisible. It depends on so many different circumstances. But in the end, both are patterns of voice and personal power that through the pure use of voice can be disrupted and then cleared and shifted and then uplifted, if you will, into that space of true self. Um, and so, how that shifted for me is being much less shy, um, more able to really tune into my heart and issue intuition and act from that place rather than reacting from others' needs or expectations. And of course, that's huge because then you become more of the director of your own life, not sort of pinballing off of other people willy-nilly and having confusion or lack of clarity about your direction.
mm,
And then as that comes in, then the harmonization, the synchronization helps, I guess, to solidify that self even more. I feel like that was a little bit long-winded, but hopefully it made sense.
Yeah, it's good. I want to mention, I love that you're talking about disruption, and you mention disruption because a disruption can change a pattern.
Yes.
And disruption falls under one of the categories that a scientist labeled that everything is one of five things. His name is Herbert Spencer. He died in 1903. He said, everything can be categorized as falling under time, force, action, space, or matter.
Mm-hmm.
And when you mention disruption is a force.
Yeah.
And so using that force beneficially is really amazing and powerful. And you mentioned that it allowed you to step forward into yourself, where you were more quiet and you were allowing things to happen to you rather than you happening to the things around you. So that's beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. And the idea of disruption, I mean, again, it can be about disrupting a mind pattern, mind loops. I work with people a lot on that. A pattern of an energetic system, like a dynamic you have with people, other people, or a relationship to space. And as you know, sound is also being used in physical health and well-being. Um, Using sound in things like cancer treatments and other things, and to break up things. So it's really a powerful force. And I guess part of my mission is to help people use that, realize that, and use it in their own lives for their own health and well-being.
So people would look at you now and be like, oh, she was shy and she didn't own her voice. That, like, people don't understand. So we're looking at you now. And so besides the things you've said, many things you've said, is there anything else you can share about what was your path like from there to here?
Yeah. So I was very shy, but also part of that, because I took on characters or a persona, there were some spaces and places where I was present, but I wasn't myself, if that makes sense. So, I mean, and by present, I mean not present like myself is present, but like I was active. I wasn't just hiding in the corner. I did stuff, but it wasn't as me.
Authentic.
Yeah, it wasn't authentic.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of anxiety. I was riddled with anxiety. It was just an undercurrent in everything I did. And I mean, part of the story here is that it was so much, and part of the self-destructive behaviors were coping mechanisms for the anxiety.
Mm.
And when those things went away, there was still a lot of anxiety. And it got so bad that anyway, my nervous system kind of short-circuited. I had so much anxiety and so much stress in the deeper levels of myself that weren't being tended to, that my physical body had a reaction of a seizure disorder. It was non-epileptic. None of the traditional doctors or hospitals that I went to could define it. And it really was energetic, and stress on my body and emotional body were causing it.
Mm-hmm.
So long story short, out of that, another sort of universe intervening, a friend of mine who knew I was struggling with this kind of thing was out at dinner and overheard a couple of people talking, a woman talking about her son who had these unexplained seizures, and they found this person who helped him. And she went over and she was like, my friend, oh my gosh, I need to get the name of this person. And it ended up being a naturopathic, energetic healing person who understood the physical body and also understood the spiritual, emotional, energetic aspect of things. And
huge
so, yeah, huge blessing. And I mean, that was a game changer. And that's really why I do this now. I wasn't someone who just was going to go get treated. I wanted to immerse myself in it and learn it from the inside out. So I really could never have to deal with any of that again. Yeah. And so the voice, even though the story of the voice with my voice teacher came before, and that was helpful, it wasn't the full picture. It wasn't until my understanding of all of this that I could fully use the voice to catalyze this integration, if you will. And thus here I am with my practice today, which is auroramindindenergy.com, by the way.
Perfect.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Would you repeat that again, Susan?
Yes, auroramindindenergy.com.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you, Wendy. Thank you to everyone who was with us and watching. We want to hear from you. If our conversation spoke to you, please tell us what's on your heart and leave us a comment. For more information about how you can live by heart, please go to our livebyhearttoday.com site. Like and follow this page and turn on notifications so you don't miss our program, which airs every week on Thursdays at 4:44 Pacific time. From our heart to yours, we're creating a better tomorrow because we live by heart today.
And that concludes this portion of
Live by Heart Today!
Thank you for watching. Join us every Thursday at 4:44 p.m. for another episode of Live by Heart
Today!
Let's give a shout out to our sponsor. Thank you, We Are Storically, for making this show possible.